This footage looks like an ordinary family moment. Smiles, cheers, and pride filling the air. A mother and father clap from the stands as their twin daughters walk across the graduation stage. But behind this cheerful picture lies a secret that would soon destroy everything. The couple you see smiling is Celeste and Stephen Beard. Their twin daughters, Jennifer and Christina, are graduating high school, and this moment should have been the highlight of their lives, a celebration of family, love, and accomplishment. But look closer. Just in front of them, a woman sits alone, clapping quietly as the twins take their diplomas. Her name is Tracy Tarleton. To everyone else, she's just another guest, a family friend showing support. But what no one in those stands knows is that Tracy isn't there by chance. Only a few months before this day, Tracy had been released from a psychiatric facility. And ever since, she had been secretly meeting with Celeste, the twins' own mother. Those meetings weren't friendly catch-ups. They were private sessions of planning, manipulation, and a plot that would end in blood. Soon, this smiling mother in the crowd would be accused of masterminding a violent crime, and the woman in front of her would become her weapon. A crime so twisted it would force two young girls, Jennifer and Christina, to run for their lives from the one person they trusted most. Short pause, tone shifts. She was terrifying. We couldn't lock enough doors to feel safe. We thought she might kill us next. Those are the words of her own daughters. To understand how a mother could end up at the center of such darkness, we need to go back, to a time before the secrets, before the betrayal, before the fear. It's 1993 in Austin, Texas. 13-year-old Christina lives with her mother Celeste and stepfather Stephen Beard, a wealthy, retired television executive known for his generosity and charm. Hundreds of miles away in Washington state, her identical twin sister Jennifer lives with their biological father, Craig. The girl's parents had gone through a long and painful divorce. When the court decided custody, the verdict tore the twins apart. Christina would stay with her mother, Jennifer with her father. And just like that, two sisters who once shared everything suddenly had to live separate lives. They were each other's best friend, their mirror image in every sense. Being apart wasn't just difficult, it felt like losing half of themselves. I missed her every day, Christina would later recall. We were built-in best friends. Jennifer agreed. It was strange not having my other half. She always knew what I was feeling without me having to say it. For 3 long years they kept their bond alive through letters, late-night phone calls, and promises that one day they'd be together again. That day would finally come in July 1996, the summer that would start as a joyful reunion but end in heartbreak and death. After years of separation, the twins reunite at their grandparents' house in California. They're overjoyed, laughing, talking nonstop, staying up late, catching up on lost time. We just picked up where we left off, Jennifer remembered. We laughed so hard we cried. But that laughter wouldn't last. When Jennifer tried calling her father, Craig, to tell him she'd arrived safely, there was no answer. She called again. Still nothing. Hours turned into days, silence. Then the phone rang. The girls were told that their father had been found dead in his home, next to a handwritten letter. He had been quietly battling deep pain that no one knew about. I felt like I died that day, Jennifer said softly. What was supposed to be a 2-week reunion turned into the beginning of a new life, and a nightmare. With their father gone, Jennifer moved to Austin to live with her mother Celeste, her twin Christina, and Celeste's new husband, Stephen Beard. At first things seemed okay. Stephen was kind, generous, and caring, a man who welcomed Jennifer into his home like she was his own. When I met Steve, he was just so sweet, Jennifer said. Every Sunday we'd go to breakfast together. I was so grateful for him. From the outside, the Beards looked like the perfect blended family, the twins reunited, their mother happy, and Stephen providing stability they'd never had before. He even adopted the girls legally, giving them matching family rings, a gesture that made them feel truly wanted. He gave us these rings after adopting us, Christina recalled. It made me feel like I finally belonged. But behind the walls of their beautiful Austin home, things were changing, and not for the better. Because soon what looked like a happy family would unravel into fear, manipulation, and murder. And it would all begin with a single night, October 2, 1999, at 2:30 a.m. It's October 2, 1999. A quiet night in Austin, Texas. The Beard household is asleep. Jennifer is staying at her boyfriend's house. Her twin sister, Christina, is in her room, fast asleep. The house is still, until suddenly everything changes. Christina's bedroom door bursts open. Her mother, Celeste, rushes in, pale, panicked, eyes wide. "Someone's at the door," she yells. Christina jumps out of bed, confused. "What's going on?" she shouts back, trying to make sense of the fear in her mother's voice. As she runs toward the front of the house, flashes of light cut through the windows. Red, blue, white. The sound of sirens fills the night. She grabs the phone and dials 911. "There's someone outside," she cries to the operator. "They're banging on the door, there are lights, I don't know who it is." The dispatcher quickly responds. "Ma'am, it's the police. Let them in." Christina hesitates for a moment, then rushes to the door. She opens it, and officers rush inside. "Is your dad home?" one asks. "Yes," Christina says, "he's upstairs." The officers sprint up the staircase, Celeste following behind, her voice trembling. By the time they reach Stephen Beard's bedroom, paramedics are already there, working desperately to save him. Stephen is lying in bed, gravely wounded. There's blood everywhere. The scene looks chaotic, unreal. Christina stands frozen at the doorway, unable to move or speak. She can only watch as they try to keep her stepfather alive. Moments later, one of the officers makes a grim discovery, a shotgun shell lying near the bed. Christina's heart stops. "Are you saying he was shot?" she asks, barely able to get the words out. "Yes," the officer replies. Stephen Beard, the man who had adopted her, loved her, and given her stability, had been shot at close range while he slept. Christina calls Jennifer, her hands shaking. Her twin answers, confused and scared. "Steve's been shot," Christina cries. Jennifer's voice breaks. "What? Oh, is he alive?" "I don't know," Christina whispers. "They're taking him to the hospital." Minutes later, a medical helicopter lifts Stephen from the house. The girls can only pray he makes it through the night. Back at the Beard home, detectives begin their investigation. They seal off the house, combing through every inch. It looks like the shooter came in through a side door left unlocked, went straight to Stephen's room and fired one shot before disappearing into the night. The family is taken to give statements and DNA samples, standard procedure. But before leaving the house, Celeste leans toward Christina and whispers something that will haunt her forever. "If the police ask who might have done this," she says quietly, "don't mention Tracy's name." Christina freezes. "What? Why?" Celeste just stares ahead, offering no explanation. Why would she say that? Who is Tracy? That's when the investigation takes a turn. Police start looking into Tracy Tarleton, the woman who sat alone at the twins' graduation months earlier. She managed a local bookstore in Austin, and had become unusually close with Celeste. Tracy was a frequent guest in the Beard home. Dinners, birthdays, family events, always by Celeste's side. To outsiders they looked like friends. But to Jennifer and Christina something felt off. They had a strange relationship, Christina recalled. "It seemed like Tracy wanted more than friendship from our mom," Jennifer added. Still, they never imagined the connection between Tracy and the shooting, until Celeste told them not to say her name. The girls couldn't shake the thought. Was their mother protecting Tracy? At the hospital, detectives continue questioning the family. When they ask Christina who she thinks could have done this, she hesitates, then speaks carefully. "My mom told me not to say this, but she said not to mention Tracy Tarleton." From that moment, Tracy becomes the prime suspect. Detectives dig deeper into her background and quickly discover that she owns a Franchi 20-gauge shotgun, the same type used in the attack. When police arrive at Tracy's home, she opens the door nervously. "Do you own a shotgun?" they ask. "Yes," she replies. "Can we see it?" She hesitates for a moment, then nods. "Okay." She hands over the weapon, her name engraved on the barrel. Days later, forensic results confirm it. The shell found next to Stephen Beard's bed came from that very gun. 5 days after the shooting, on October 8, 1999, Tracy Tarleton is arrested and charged with attempted murder. But investigators aren't satisfied. They believe someone else is behind it, someone who had the motive, the influence, and the reason to want Stephen Beard dead. They suspect that Tracy didn't act alone. While Tracy sits behind bars, refusing to speak, Stephen Beard clings to life in the hospital. For months, doctors fight to save him. The twins visit often, sitting by his bedside, holding his hand. But despite every effort, Stephen's condition worsens. Finally, after months of pain and complications, he passes away, the wound from that shotgun blast proving too much for his body to bear. The man who gave the twins a home, love, and security is gone. The girls are heartbroken. "We loved Steve," Jennifer said. "He wanted nothing but happiness for us." Christina adds softly, "He filled the space my real father left behind. Losing him felt like losing another parent." But even as they grieve, something doesn't feel right. Celeste's behavior during Stephen's final days, and after his death, doesn't match that of a grieving widow. And soon, her actions will leave her daughters wondering if their mother had something to hide, something far darker than anyone imagined. After Stephen Beard's death, investigators begin piecing together the life he left behind, and the people who surrounded him in his final years. One name keeps resurfacing: Tracy Tarleton. She isn't family. She isn't a longtime friend. Yet somehow she's tied to everything: the shooting, the whispers, and now the growing suspicion that this was no random act of violence. Tracy was known in Austin as a creative, private woman. She managed a local bookstore, loved literature, and often kept to herself. But beneath that quiet surface was a person who longed for connection, and when she met Celeste Beard, that connection became an obsession. The two met at a mental health treatment center where both women were patients. Celeste had been struggling with depression, and Tracy was battling her own emotional challenges. During their stay they formed a friendship, one that quickly grew intense. After leaving the facility, Tracy began spending nearly every day with Celeste. The two went shopping together, took long drives and shared meals, sometimes laughing like old friends, sometimes whispering secrets like partners. But the line between friendship and something more began to blur. Tracy confided to friends that she was in love with Celeste. She described her as magnetic, irresistible, someone who made her feel needed for the first time in years. Celeste, however, had a different story. To her daughters, she insisted Tracy was just a friend, someone she pitied, someone who depended on her. But to everyone else, it looked like Celeste was leading Tracy on, feeding her affection, fueling her attachment, and using it to her advantage. The twins noticed it too. Jennifer recalled, Tracy was always around. It was like she never left. And Mom didn't seem to mind. Christina added, I thought it was strange, the gifts, the phone calls, the way Mom talked to her. It didn't feel like friendship. Even the neighbors found it odd that Celeste would spend nights away from home, often claiming she was with friends, only for people to later learn she was with Tracy. The relationship deepened, and soon the two women began to confide in each other about Stephen, and that's where everything began to turn dark. According to those close to them, Celeste often complained about her husband. She said Stephen was controlling, that she felt trapped in the marriage, and that life with him was unbearable. But what she didn't mention was the financial side. Stephen Beard was a multimillionaire. He had built his fortune in television broadcasting, living a life of comfort and wealth. When he married Celeste, he was smitten and generous. He bought her luxury cars, expensive jewelry, and a mansion in Westlake Hills. But as time passed, Stephen began to see Celeste's reckless spending and erratic behavior as a problem. Their marriage grew tense. Friends later recalled that Stephen had considered cutting her off financially, something Celeste would never accept. Investigators soon uncovered a chilling pattern. Celeste had been manipulating Tracy for months, convincing her that Stephen was a monster, abusive, cruel, and dangerous. Tracy, deeply in love, believed every word. To her, she wasn't committing a crime, she was rescuing the woman she loved. Detectives would later discover dozens of emails, phone calls, and letters between the two women. In one message, Celeste described Stephen as a burden I can't carry anymore. In another, she wrote, I wish it could all just end. Tracy took those words to heart. Meanwhile, Celeste was playing the part of the perfect wife, taking care of Stephen after his hospital stay, visiting him daily, smiling for the nurses, assuring everyone she was heartbroken and devoted. But behind closed doors, she was seeing Tracy again, quietly, secretly, as though nothing had changed. When police questioned Tracy in jail, she remained silent for weeks. She refused to talk about Celeste, about the shooting, or about what had really happened that night. Until one day everything changed. A detective visited her cell and handed her a newspaper. On the front page was a photo of Celeste, smiling, holding hands with a new man, laughing. The headline read, Celeste Beard moves on months after husband's death. Tracy stared at the image, her hands trembling. The woman she thought she'd killed was already with someone else. That's when she broke her silence. She told detectives everything. She confessed that Celeste had manipulated her, made her believe Stephen was harming her, made her feel that killing him was the only way to save her. She said Celeste planned everything, the timing, the weapon, even the alibi. According to Tracy, Celeste told her exactly where the shotgun was, how to enter the house, and when Stephen would be asleep. Tracy claimed she didn't do it for money. She did it for love. I thought she loved me, Tracy said. But she just used me. Her confession stunned investigators, but they needed proof. Tracy's story painted Celeste as the mastermind, but without evidence, it was just one person's word against another's. So detectives began quietly building their case. They gathered phone records, financial statements, and witness testimony. They spoke with hospital staff who remembered Celeste's coldness toward Stephen, and friends who said she had bragged about her new life after his death. Then came the most damaging discovery. Celeste had inherited millions from Stephen's estate. Jewelry, designer clothes, and hosting lavish parties. The woman who had once claimed to be heartbroken was now living like nothing had happened. For investigators, that was motive. For prosecutors, it was a case. And for Jennifer and Christina, it was the beginning of an unthinkable realization. Could their own mother have been behind Stephen's death? The twins wanted to believe she was innocent. They wanted to think Tracy acted alone. But deep down they couldn't ignore what they were seeing. The way their mother talked about Tracy. The way she dismissed Stephen's memory. The way she laughed at the idea of ever being caught. Christina once asked her directly, "Mom, did you have anything to do with Steve's death?" Celeste looked her straight in the eye and said, "Don't ever ask me that again." That silence said more than words ever could. And soon the truth would come out, in a courtroom where every secret, every lie, and every betrayal would be exposed for the world to see. By early 2002, the story that had once been whispered about behind closed doors exploded into national headlines. The case of Celeste Beard and the murder of her millionaire husband, Stephen Beard, was now one of the most talked about crimes in Texas. The public wanted answers. Was Celeste a victim of manipulation, as she claimed? Or was she the mastermind behind the entire plot, the woman who convinced her lover to pull the trigger? After years of investigation, prosecutors believed they finally had enough to prove the truth. And when Tracy Tarleton took the stand, everything changed. The courtroom was packed. Reporters lined the aisles. Every camera was pointed at the same woman, Celeste Beard, calm, polished, perfectly dressed. But just a few feet away sat Tracy, now frail and pale, her voice trembling as she began to speak. She told the jury how she met Celeste, how she fell in love, and how that love was used against her. "She told me her husband was hurting her," Tracy said. "She said he was cruel. She said she couldn't escape unless he was gone." The jury leaned forward as Tracy described how Celeste manipulated her mind, with affection, lies, and promises of a life together. "She made me believe we were soulmates," Tracy said through tears. "She told me that if I really loved her, I'd do it. She said we could finally be together, free." According to Tracy, Celeste had every detail planned, from the night Stephen would be alone to the type of gun she should use. When Tracy hesitated, Celeste allegedly told her, "Once he's gone, everything will be ours. We can finally be happy." The courtroom fell silent. But what shocked everyone even more was what happened after the shooting. Tracy said that after she fired the gun, she immediately called Celeste, whispering, "It's done." Celeste told her to stay calm and to say nothing. Then, just days later, as Stephen fought for his life in the hospital, Celeste was at a spa, getting a facial. Prosecutors showed the receipts. They showed how Celeste spent thousands of dollars shopping, dining, and living lavishly while her husband lay dying. And when Stephen finally passed away, Celeste wasted no time. She began celebrating. Witnesses testified that she laughed about the insurance payout, joked about her husband's death, and even told a friend, "I'm finally free." But the most powerful testimony didn't come from Tracy. It came from Celeste's own daughters, Jennifer and Christina. They were torn between love and truth, between loyalty to their mother and justice for the man who had raised them. Christina took a deep breath as she walked to the witness stand. Her hands shook as she began to speak. "My mom told me not to say Tracy's name the night Steve was shot," she said quietly. "At the time I didn't understand why. But now, I think she was hiding something." Jennifer followed. Her voice was steady, but her eyes were filled with pain. "She used to tell us that Steve was controlling," Jennifer said. "But I never saw that. He loved her. He loved all of us. He gave us everything." As the twins spoke, Celeste stared at them, expressionless. No tears. No emotion. For the jury, that silence spoke louder than words. Over the next several weeks, prosecutors presented a mountain of evidence. Bank records showing how Celeste benefited financially after Stephen's death, witness statements from friends who recalled her boasting about her inheritance, and letters exchanged between her and Tracy that hinted at a deep, toxic bond. In one of those letters, Celeste wrote, "I can't sir, how could you?" Instead, she whispered, "Stay quiet. I'll take care of you when this is over." That was enough. After weeks of testimony and hours of deliberation, the jury reached a verdict. The courtroom fell silent as the foreman stood. On the charge of capital murder, he said, "We find the defendant, Celeste Beard, guilty." Gasps filled the room. Celeste sat motionless, her jaw clenched, her eyes fixed ahead. Tracy looked down and wept. Jennifer and Christina held hands, tears streaming down their faces, not of victory but of heartbreak. Their mother, the woman who gave them life, was now convicted of murder. Celeste Beard was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 40 years. Outside the courthouse, reporters surrounded the twins. One asked, "How do you feel about the verdict?" Jennifer took a deep breath before answering. "We loved our mom," she said. "But we also loved Steve. And he didn't deserve what happened to him." Christina added softly, "We didn't want to believe it. But we couldn't ignore the truth." For them, the verdict wasn't closure. It was loss, all over again. They had lost Stephen. They had lost their mother. And they had lost the family they once believed was unbreakable. But deep down they knew one thing for certain. Stephen Beard finally got justice. And Tracy Tarleton, the woman who pulled the trigger, was sentenced to 20 years in prison after testifying against Celeste. Years later, Celeste continued to insist she was innocent, giving interviews from behind bars and claiming she was framed. But the evidence, the testimonies, and the pain she left behind all told a different story. Even now, Jennifer and Christina struggle to understand how their mother's choices shattered their lives. But in the end, truth always finds its way to the surface, no matter how carefully someone tries to hide it. Because in the case of Celeste Beard, love, greed, and betrayal collided in the most devastating way imaginable. And in that collision, everyone lost. When the gavel finally came down and the courtroom emptied, what remained was silence, the kind that sits heavy in the chest. The trial of Celeste Beard was over, but for those left behind, the story was far from finished. Jennifer and Christina Beard walked out of that courtroom not as daughters, but as survivors. They had testified against their own mother. They had watched her face a lifetime behind bars. And they had done it knowing that the truth would cost them everything. In the months that followed, both sisters tried to rebuild their lives. Jennifer enrolled in school again, focusing on her future, while Christina sought therapy to process the trauma she'd been carrying since childhood. They stayed close, clinging to each other for strength, two sisters who had already lost too much. They rarely spoke about their mother. And when they did, it was with a mix of sadness and disbelief. Christina once said, "It's strange to love someone who did something unforgivable. I'll always love my mom, but I'll never understand her." Meanwhile, in a Texas state prison, Celeste Beard began serving her life sentence. To this day, she maintains her innocence. She's given several interviews from behind bars, calm, articulate, and always repeating the same claim. "I didn't kill my husband. I didn't ask anyone to kill him. Tracy acted on her own." She insists that Tracy was obsessed with her, that the entire story was twisted to make her look guilty. But the evidence, the letters, the phone calls, the financial motive, remains impossible to ignore. Inside prison, Celeste lives a quiet, controlled life. She works in the library and avoids conflict. Inmates describe her as polite, but distant, a woman who keeps her emotions buried deep. Still, those who've met her say there's something calculating behind her calmness. One former cellmate claims Celeste often spoke about her old life, describing the wealth, the house, and the luxuries she once had, never once mentioning Stephen's name with remorse. As for Tracy Tarleton, her life also changed forever. After testifying against Celeste, she served nearly 10 years of her 20-year sentence before being released on parole. In interviews after her release, Tracy appeared tired, worn by guilt and regret. She admitted, "I'll live with what I did for the rest of my life. I thought I was helping someone I loved. But I was being used." Tracy moved away from Austin, avoiding the spotlight. She rarely speaks publicly now, but when she does, she always ends her words with the same message. "Love can blind you. It blinded me." The case of Celeste Beard remains one of Texas's most haunting true crime stories, not because of the violence alone, but because of what it revealed about human nature. A woman who seemed to have everything, wealth, a loving husband, beautiful daughters, was still willing to risk it all for money and control. And a woman who thought she was acting out of love became a weapon in someone else's plan. In the years since, the Beard twins have worked to move forward. They've both spoken publicly about the importance of mental health, about recognizing manipulation, and about the strength it takes to stand up for what's right, even when it means standing alone. They've built quiet, private lives, far from the chaos they once lived in. Still, Every October, when the anniversary of Stephen's death comes around, they remember him, not for how he died but for how he lived. Stephen Beard was a kind, generous man who opened his heart to a family that needed him. He believed in love, in forgiveness, and in second chances. And though his life ended in tragedy, his legacy lives on in the resilience of the two girls he raised as his own. In the end, this story isn't just about murder. It's about manipulation. It's about choices, and the devastating ripple effects they leave behind. Celeste Beard sits in prison counting the years. Tracy Tarleton lives in silence, counting her regrets. And Jennifer and Christina carry the weight of both truth and loss. Proof that even when justice is served, healing takes a lifetime. As one of the investigators later said, this wasn't a story about evil strangers. It was a story about people who were supposed to love each other, and how far one person went when love turned into greed. If you've watched this far, you've seen every layer, the lies, the betrayal, the heartbreak, and the justice. What do you think? Was Celeste Beard truly the mastermind, or did she simply lose control of a dangerous friendship? Let us know what you believe in the comments below. And remember, not every love story ends in happiness. Some end in handcuffs. This is a true life. The case of Celeste Beard reminds us that sometimes, the greatest danger doesn't come from strangers, but from the people we trust the most. What are your thoughts on this case? Do you believe justice was truly served, or is there still more to this story than we know? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'll be reading them. If you found this story as gripping as we did, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more real-life true crime stories that prove truth really is stranger than fiction. Until next time, stay safe. And remember, this is a true life.